Hello, everybody. My name is Mirko Novakovic. I am co-founder and CEO of Zero, and welcome to Code Red. Code, because we are talking about code, and Red stands for requests, errors, and duration, the core metrics of observability. On this podcast, you will hear from leaders around our industry about what they are building, what's next in observability, and what you can do today to avoid your next outage. Today, my guest is Juraj Masar. Juraj is the co-founder and CEO of BetterStack, an observability platform used by more than 400,000 engineers and 7,000 customers, including Brave, NordVPN, and UNICEF. He's building the company into a profitable developer-first alternative to legacy observability vendors while operating with a deliberately small team. We will talk about that. Welcome to Code Red.
Thanks, Mirko. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and I always start the conversation with my first question. What was your biggest Code Red moment in your career?
So I thought about it over the last years. Obviously, I went through many downtimes and many incidents, but one stands out. Back in 2011, I was VP engineering at a company called Represent, where we sold T-shirts with celebrities over their social media, and we were working with this one middle-aged man celebrity, selling T-shirts to other middle-aged men. And so you can imagine how surprised we were, where after selling thousands and thousands of T-shirts, we look at the orders, and we turned out that most of the T-shirts sold for this middle-aged man campaign were women's S T-shirts. And for a moment, we thought, what an interesting social, sort of phenomenon happened over here. And then we realized that we did this database migration where we overwrote the connection. So we were this close to shipping thousands and thousands of T-shirts of increased sizes that would probably bury the company at the time. This was 2011. It was early in our careers. We had database backups once per day. We ended up parsing logs to reconstruct the e-commerce orders from logs. And we ended up saving the company. But there was a moment where I was like, oh, okay, maybe a real-time database replication is a thing, and maybe you should always, triple review your table migrations before you actually run them. There was a scary moment.
Absolutely. And that's why also data observability is an interesting space, right?
What a plug! What a bridge right there, Mirko. You should start a business.
Maybe. So let's talk. I mean, how did you start BetterStack? How did you came up with it?
Fixing my own problem. So I wanted to get a phone call when the website went down. And back in the day, you had to plug in Pingdom into PagerDuty with these terrible APIs. And we asked ourselves the question, how hard can this be? And at the time, working with a few friends, we made a bet that we're going to launch this in a week. A simple service where you enter a credit card, enter a phone number, enter a URL, and you're going to get a phone call when your website went down. And sort of ever since, whether it was eBPF based telemetry tracing, whether it was log management, whether it was something like status pages or AI SRE, we simply followed the market. We followed what our customers asked us to do.
Yeah, but so you started with this combination of synthetic checks and on-call, basically, right?
You need to start somewhere, right? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, and I think it's smart, right? It's a good way of acquiring customers. You're in I would say, simpler domain than logs, metrics, traces somehow, right? And also easy to onboard.
You certainly don't need to build your data warehouse in order to check websites. I can tell you that. Yet it's still a complicated problem.
Yes, but also from an onboarding perspective, it's like, I think Pingdom, how many customers did they have? 100,000?
Look, everyone needs something like this. Do you know what I mean?
Everything.
It's the best lead gen out there.
Yeah, absolutely. So you started with that, and I remember, I think it's way before I started Zero, we talked, right? Because you were, I think, fundraising, and I helped the VC, so I had a conversation, and I was pretty impressed, right? Because you did almost everything through, I think, internet marketing, right? So you didn't have a sales team at the time. You acquired the customer through SEM, SEO, and today 100,000 YouTube subscribers, right? Also through YouTube channels. So you got the people on the website, onboarding them through PLG, and then literally getting them put the credit card in and get them as customers.
That's it. The biggest marketing cost or sales cost today is our free tier. are very generous free tier that gets us those hundreds and hundreds of people using us.
That's really good. And how do you think overall about pricing? I know that you have a lot of opinions around it, right? What do you think
I
about
do.
the pricing models out there,
Okay.
charging for gigabytes and the same costs, right? So
Yes.
um,
So do you want to talk
what do you
about
think?
pricing for the big clouds out there, or do you want to start talking about pricing of observability tools?
I think both. I saw a picture today of you in the data center, so I can imagine what you are doing there, right?
It's called vertical integration. We're everywhere in between AWS all the way to bare metal, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. So are you using a cloud vendor today, or are you already on bare metal?
It's a combination so
Okay.
different people ask us for different deployments in their cloud. In 2011, when AWS was really getting popular, the big promise back then was that your total cost of ownership was going to be lower. That you can autoscale your instances, and if you're not getting a huge volume, just scale them down. You're going to pay less. I don't think this ever materialized. And sort of Amazon persuaded everyone that hosting is a terrible business, yet they generate north of $100 billion these days. And so I have strong opinions on how teams should build on big clouds. I think you should absolutely use them, and I think you should use them for the commoditized parts of their offering. I think speaking about AWS, you should use their EC2. That's wonderful, super powerful. I think you should use their object storage. I think you can send emails via AWS. But the moment you start going into these very cloud specific services, whether that's Lambda, SQS, SNS, DynamoDB, those exist to lock you into the ecosystem, making it impossible to rip them out later and migrate away. Essentially, if you think about the product offering of modern cloud, is architected about locking customers in. Compute is fundamentally a commodity. How many CPUs are there in data centers? How come so many people are on AWS never leaving? Sending 1 terabyte file from AWS to the internet costs close to $100. Yet the actual cost that AWS is paying is something like 15 cents. So that right there means that many customers are reluctant to have hybrid solutions right there. And so essentially, my point of cloud is absolutely do use it. Use it where is the right tool. Where you, for instance, can predict your future workloads where you need to scale fast, where you're in a high growth startup like us. That's the moment to use cloud. But be very careful when someone comes with a very bright idea. Let's plug in the Redshift. Let's plug in that BigQuery. Let's plug in the DynamoDB, because those are the moments where you're making the choice to stick with the cloud vendor forever. So just as long as you're able to take your workload and migrate it to GCP tomorrow, to Azure tomorrow, you're in a good place.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was a lot of discussion. I mean, openly discussion by DHH, right? Who openly said that he was migrating away, and he compared also S3 cost, right? S3 cost to hosting it himself, right? Which was like I don't remember, but at least a 10x difference in cost.
Oh, more than that, more than that. When you think about bare metal versus these budget providers like Hetzner, think 10x roughly. 10x different in cost. And when you think Hetzner to say AWS, like pro providers, big tech providers, think another 10x, depending on what exact instance you use. But oftentimes, when you use serverless compute like Lambda, for instance, you might be overpaying by 100x to the bare metal that's running it. And sure, it scales up and down, and it can be great for some workloads. But here's another alternative take you can do. You can take that money if you're actually running a sustained workload on something like Lambda, and you can over provision your architecture by 100x for the same amount of money. And turns out, oftentimes, when you over provision by 100x, suddenly it's much easier to develop for such a system, because you don't need to optimize for memory usage in your system all the time because you're running on tiny instances. It's easier for engineers to ship new software. So TLDR, the big clouds have hundreds of billions of dollars of motivation to persuade you that you're not a startup unless you're running on AWS. You're not a startup. You're not a real company unless you're running on Kubernetes. You're not a real startup unless fill in the blanks. And there's a lot of people living a very happy life, like DHH, that their business is not selling compute. So they don't need to shout about alternative ways of doing it, but they're very happy running in these very different ways. 10 years ago, AWS actually simplified things. 10 years ago, 20 years ago, you'd need to go and buy the servers out there. These days, the open source tooling progressed so much that learning how to use these proprietary cloud tools is often equally, if not more complex than learning to use open source tools that give you the freedom of using the cloud vendor of your choice.
No, that makes absolute sense. And I remember talking to the city of Zinga once, and they said, like, the gamings, right? They always start on AWS because they can't predict the load, right? They don't know
Yeah.
how much load we'll get. And then once they know the load, they migrate it to an on-premise or own data center because it's so much cheaper, right? So I think that's really good. And talking about this, I mean, for us observability vendors, that's a big part of the cost, right? We have to process and store heavy amounts of data. So
Yes, 100%.
S3, EC2 is the more majority of our cost, to be honest, right? Running it. So how do you think about pricing of logs, metrics, traces by gigabyte?
Yes.
And you also made huge changes, right? I remember when you came out with metrics, it was super expensive first, and then you put it down like 1,000x or something, right?
Yeah. The reason is that how do you price it? Okay. I'll get back to the story. It's a funny story. Remind me if I forget. But you asked about pricing. So there are two different topics to talk about. One of them is sort of billing. How do you structure the billing? And the second thing is, okay, what is the price point? How much should this cost? So let's talk about the structure first. What are the properties of good billing? It's understandable. Customers don't need a PhD to understand what it means, and it's predictable. You send me more data, I charge you more money. You know what to expect. Now, we actually changed our billing recently one more time, and I need to do PR about it, where we started charging for metrics in gigabytes. And this is a fundamentally good example. So Grafana charges for active series, Datadog charges for custom metrics. We were charging for active data points. Signals charges for million samples, and Dash Zero charges for data points, metric, this was something like that. The point
Yes,
is, everyone
data
charges
points.
for
Yeah.
something else. And then I'm looking in my Datadog invoice, and I'm like, how much is this going to cost on BetterStack? And I have no clue. And that's just stupid. That's just stupid, right? So that's not understandable. That's why we simply simplified everything. That hey, let's talk about gigabytes. Everyone can imagine 1 GB of data, and then there's price point. So let's talk about price. You mentioned S3. So storing 1 GB on S3 costs roughly 2 cents. And if you're smarter and go to a compatible object storage that doesn't charge for egress, like Cloudflare R2, that's 1.5 cents. Okay. Let's talk about even how much it costs to buy a super fast NVMe SSD. So that costs roughly 10 to 20 cents per gigabyte buying one drive. And now, if I look at Datadog's pricing page right now, I see that if I store 1 GB of logs for 30 days with on-demand billing, I'm paying almost $4, $3.85. Okay, so I can buy the drive, one super fast drive for 10 to 20 cents, and I can per gigabyte, and I own it. Or I can rent the space on Cloudflare for a cent per gigabyte. Yet I'm paying $4 for the same gigabyte for 1 month. I'm simplifying, okay? I'm not talking about redundancy and RAID and compression and high availability, but the point stands, like there's a huge disconnect. And so the point is that no one ever got fired for buying Datadog. And right now there's an entire industry that was created about optimizing cloud cost and observability vendor cost. And I think this kind of that's kind of insane that we're doing financial engineering on how to optimize our invoices, where we should be doing real engineering on how to work with a lot of data efficiently. And so internally, what we've done is that we built our own data warehouse with this in mind, that we will always have to be as data efficient as possible while offering super fast queries at massive scale. And at the same time, we went really far with vertical integration, meaning combining the best of cloud but combining the best of bare metal. And so today, that one gigabyte, we charge 15 cents to process and store it for for 1 month. And this is sort of a strategic decision. And so, like, honestly, when you talk about pricing observability, it is kind of insane that it costs 2 cents to store a gigabyte on S3, yet it costs almost $4 to store it on Datadog with on-demand billing.
Absolutely, yeah. But I always also say, I mean, you can look at it from two dimensions, right? One is the infrastructure cost against it, which is what you are doing, right? You compare what does it cost to have the disk or to store it in S3, but then you also have a gross margin on it for all the costs to basically build and sell the product, right? And what I found, I mean, we have to look at the P&L of Datadog. They spend $1 billion a year on R&D, which you kind of have to finance. Right now is, I think you have a different opinion on sizes of teams, right? So I think I read
Certainly,
that
yeah.
you said 150 people max, right? Hardcore mode. And I think you have, what did you say, 30 engineers, 15 engineers? I don't remember, 30 overall?
We're between 30 and 40 people right now, and roughly, let's say, 15 engineers, 15 superstars.
Yeah. So 50 superstars and basically building this. And there's also a large leverage, right? Because if you have $1 billion in R&D, you have to have that gross margin, right? Because you have to spend a lot of money on your engineering team.
So let's talk about the engineering team. Let's talk about how software should be built. Okay. So Paul Graham wrote the book Hackers and Painters when he sold via web, and this was in the 2000s or even around the .com boom. And he said that the best engineers create 50 times as much value as the, so let's call them average engineers, median engineer. Ever since we got internet, then we got Stack Overflow. Right now we got Cloud Code and Cursor. I think right now that the very, very best engineer, 0.1% of engineer on the bell curve, creates, say, 1,000 times as much value as the average engineer. And so the trouble is, typically you get the opposite of that, which is that companies treat engineers as a commodity. They think, oh, I have a big project. I need 8 engineers to work on this for a month. And that's, I think, the worst thing how you can think about something as high leverage of software engineering, where the very best people get insane leverage on their work and time. And so what we do, for instance, is that we, for instance, pay our engineers based on the output of what they create. There isn't an artificial table. You're with the company for 3 years and you're a senior engineer. This is your pay. No, we actually do the work and understand what's the output of their work, and we pay on that. Plus, it's just more fun to work with a tight group of people who are super senior, and you can learn a lot of things that attracts other super senior people to join you. You mentioned in the intro that, oh, BetterStack is a profitable business. I think of BetterStack as a fast growth business. That's the point of what we are doing it. And when we every single time where we mention profitability and the fact that all the VC money that we ever raise is in the bank, I say unintentionally profitable. This is a side effect of what happened. The point is to grow. The point is to serve many millions of engineers. And profitability is just a side effect of how we organize that. And I don't think we should be talking about cost. I don't think we should be talking about gross margin. We should be talking about how to ship software fast, how to ship better software fast. And and I don't think that in the age of cloud code, you get even Instagram was when Instagram was sold, they had what, 10 people, 15 people. When WhatsApp was sold, they had 30 people. Cursor these days have 50 or 100 people. These are tiny teams. So let's call them AI native. And so the way to think about that is that, hey, we should rethink everything and anything when it comes to enterprise sales and doing SDRs. And we should rethink everything and anything about shipping software and how to best use these tools like Cloud Code to completely reinvent engineering teams. And honestly, I don't think hiring 1,000 engineers and tell them, hey, build a better Datadog is the way to go.
No, absolutely not. Not at the start, right? I think at one point you will end up this. I mean, if you look at Datadog, to be fair, they have like, I don't know, 100 different products, right? Now we can discuss if you really need that, but if you have 100 different products, you also need someone who takes care of it somehow, right? Otherwise, it will be just stuck. And then naturally, you will come up with, okay, I need like a few engineers for the logging topic, a few engineers for profiling, a few engineers for building the agents for profiling. So, and you can't have a context switch every day if you continuously develop that product. I think there is a point. I'm not saying you need 1,000, right? But there is this point when your product grows and you need to maintain it, then you also need some sort of engineering team owning it, right?
100%, but I think you're still simplifying it quite a bit. For instance, if you grow by acquiring companies and your logging and profiling have different backends, and you just smash the UIs together, you're maintaining a very different system to where you say, we are starting on a green field. This is our data warehouse, and we want to support these two use cases. So those details really, 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 really matter. In large enterprises, 80% of your work as an engineer is migrating from one project to another project. And so this is the huge advantage of startups, that you can actually do things properly when you start, and hence sort of remediating a huge part of that penalty that you get with maintaining existing legacy systems. So I do agree with you, but I wouldn't oversimplify. And this is again when those engineers making those fundamental decisions get a lot of leverage on their time.
Yeah. But you also have today, you have almost everything you need in an observability platform, right? You started with the incident response part, right? And then you had status page, you added logs, you added metrics and dashboards, then eBPF based tracing, and now you have AI assistant, right? An SRE agent. So you are getting more and more complex, which either you can't work on all the products all the time, or at some point you need dedicated kind of engineers focusing on the topic, because there's always something to do on tracing or logging or something, right?
100%. It's just you don't need 1,000 people doing that.
No, yeah, that's true. Let's talk about tracing and eBPF. I think we discussed this also at the last trade show, and I was asking you how is it working, right? Because I think eBPF is a little bit. I love it. It's easy to use if it works, right? So how is your view on eBPF? How is it working for you and for your users? Is it simple? Does it work these days?
So yes, it does. And if you look at the OBI project in the Cloud Native Foundation, it is extremely active, and I think eBPF has already won. I think we're already there. I think it's time to declare victory. And so, look, the pitch for Better Stack today is instrument all your distributed applications without any code changes, thanks to eBPF and OpenTelemetry. Then get this unbeatable price performance ratio that we talked about in just 80 times as much data as with Datadog. And then get an AI SRE on top of all your data that you can query very fast. It's your copilot to fix live issues. So eBPF is a very important part of the stack, and it should be the new default. You are instrumenting a code. You can set up a remotely controlled eBPF data collector in one Helm install. You can try it out on your staging in 10-15 minutes. And it's going to instrument all your applications very fast. Now, is it going to work in all edge cases? Well, that depends on your application. But these days, it works mostly fine for vast majority of use cases. And so here's what I propose to our customers. This is a very cheap experiment, very fast. Try it out, and you very, very quickly see it works on 95 of our 100 services. Let's use it there. Let's switch it off on a per namespace basis, per service basis for these 5 services, where we go with a more granular OpenTelemetry SDK instrumentation. But why would you go the tough route from day one and adjust the code in every application that you have, where you get this option now? So I honestly think that is the combination of eBPF OpenTelemetry that unlock this for most people.
No, I agree. I like it too. I think if it works, it's really good, and it makes total sense, right? Because as you said, you don't have to change anything. It does it on a kernel level, essentially, right? Which makes also instrumenting. I mean, some things are easy to instrument, like Java, everything that's interpreted, but especially languages that are not interpreted, like Go or C or Rust, they are harder to instrument without eBPF, right? But eBPF, it doesn't really matter, right? You can instrument almost everything.
You can still instrument the network calls coming in and out. Oftentimes you have some sort of reverse proxy in front of it. And look, if you have a dedicated service deployed on a dedicated host, thanks to eBPF, you at least see the network traffic coming in and out, although you don't know what's granular happening within that application. That is still a lot more than not having any data, right? And so that's sort of what I recommend. Like, start with eBPF. You can literally do that in 15 minutes. Like, as long as you have staging environment, just try it, okay? And then maybe it's much easier to deal with the consequences of if you have a Redis instance, which is doing 1 million queries per hour, that's probably per second, whatever. In that case, that eBPF CPU overhead is actually going to hit you quite a bit. Okay, cool. Turn it off for this service and figure it out with the granular instrumentation.
No, absolutely, absolutely makes sense. So, what I also want to talk about is your YouTube channel, right? I mean, it's
Okay.
incredible. I saw on LinkedIn you posted that you had the 100,000 subscriber, and you said you have never ever targeted for it, right? But is that a great channel for you today? Is that a great marketing channel, or how are you using that YouTube? Because it's not only about observability, right? It's about anything development, I would say, right? It's targeting developers, and it gives you
Correct.
news about almost everything, and not so much observability in specific, right?
Look, Mirko, we publish hundreds and hundreds of videos. There's like 1 or 2 videos coming out every day. So there's only so many videos you can make about observability, and we've done our fair share, and we'll do more. But yes, it targets broader developer audience in addition to SREs. Look, in 2026, the question is, how do you sell to engineers today? YouTube is sort of our version of that. Let's educate people instead of selling them on benefits and features. And oftentimes they come back and they're like, "Oh, actually, I didn't know the BetterStack is an entire observability company behind this, cool YouTube channel." So that actually generates a lot of goodwill for us.
Yeah, absolutely. I can see that. And you were from day one, right? Really good in the marketing and conversion kind of game, right? Getting people on the website, converting them to users, right?
I think you need to lean into your DNA. And my DNA was in B2C. My DNA was in online marketing. So these things are natural. I'll tell you a few things that helped better to grow in the first few days, because it's not the secret anymore. One of the very first beautiful status pages that you could put on status.yourcompany.com versus status.huggingface.com is BetterStack, right? Every one of those had powered by BetterStack in the footer, and it brought us direct referrals, but B, it helped us with search engine optimization, because we could simply point that to a landing page about the new product that we launched, and it exploded in Google. And now it was so great that everyone copied it. So these days is not a competitive advantage anymore, but it's one of these few tricks where you need to use your brain a little bit, then blend engineering with marketing, not have them siloed, but then you're able to come up with these very cheap solutions that are better than a huge marketing campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. No, congrats on that. I think you
Thanks,
reinvented it
Mirko.
over and over again, right? I also see always your I don't know, if I Google now, if I Google for Dash Zero, I normally get a very nice better stacked ad that says say goodbye to Dash Zero. Yes.
I mean, look, that's where we are. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Um,
I love it. I'm not anything offended, right? I think it's a smart idea. You have to go after vendors, right? And you have to do it. So I like it.
I would tell you that I really love that you're doing this podcast, because I think everyone in the observability industry are sort of frenemies. That we do compete with each other, but look, we are human beings and we should be friendly. And God knows, maybe in few years' time, we'll be colleagues. God knows what happens. It's a very small industry, and we share the passion for making software engineering better for people. So honestly, the only company right now, right there, that we're competing is Datadog. We talked about that before. So yeah, the different people have different ideas. So let the best idea win.
Absolutely. I'm not sure if you just made me a acquisition offer because we
Uh, uh,
we become colleagues. You said.
was it Mirko? Was it PayPal that was created by merging Confinity with X?
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
there are different ways of doing these things.
No, absolutely. I mean, we just acquired Lumigo, right? Israeli company that was specialized on AWS Lambda observability. So, what do you see next? How do you see observability evolving, especially with AI? I mean, I saw that recently. I think you posted also a few of the feedbacks of your customers with the AI SRE agent. You just also said that this will be the layer essentially where users interact with your platform, right? You have the data lake with your open telemetry data, and then you have a fast query engine, and the agents will communicate with that lake and essentially become the new user interface essentially, right? So how do you see that evolving?
I think sort of the observability category very soon we'll be talking about it as the AI SRE category, and it will be sort of the same thing. And I think you will start with the AI SRE if it's good, and then when you need to um, really laser point into problems and analyze the hypothesis and look into the raw data. Then you go into trace view and service map and lifetail and dashboards. But you will start with AI SRE. I think we can already see this with how consumers use ChatGPT. Like oftentimes I do prospecting and research on ChatGPT, and when I make a decision to buy, then I go to Google. I think you can make this parallel with how observability tools are going to be used, and it's one of those rare features that our customers really rave about. Your customers are going to like some things, and they're going to hate some other things. But it's very rare that you not only get like aha moment, I get it, but you get a moment like, oh my god, this is so amazing, this changed the way I work, right? And for instance, one of our customers recently shared this wonderful anecdote that thanks to our MCP server, their layer 2 technical support engineers now are able to write code, whereas previously they had to support customers. Because right now the non-technical L1 support is able to use the MCP to investigate issues on their own. So you literally change the org design because of new capabilities with LLM. I think this is sort of obvious for everyone, and now we can discuss what are the individual specifics of that implementation. And again, let the best idea win. But it would be foolish not to lean into this if AI is literally impacting everything and anything that we talk about.
Absolutely, absolutely. What do you think about owning the data versus AI SRE agents that are not owning the data?
I think you needed both, because I'll tell you what the AI SRE does. So I studied it quite a bit. Okay, I played with it quite a bit. It can figure out what's wrong. It is really, we had this wonderful demo where we give it a large cluster and there's an intermittent issue with Redis, and it's able to actually figure out what's wrong and suggest a hypothesis and a fix. It is not efficient though, as a human. Okay, a human needs to run way less queries. AI SRE today needs to run very fast queries very quickly. A lot of them are inefficient. So the key to making AI SRE work today is to have a wonderful infrastructure, very powerful, cheap infrastructure, powering it at scale, right? And so yes, there's a lot of people trying to build this on top of, say, Datadog's data or Grafana data or self-hosted Loki. Um, if the underlying database crashes on you, as it oftentimes did with self-hosted Loki, for instance, for me, then obviously the AI SR is going to be very limited. This point number one. Point number two is that similarly to, for instance, how Salesforce restricted their Slack APIs for AI companies, if you were running Datadog or New Relic, it's one of the options to consider to rate limit your API so that other startups cannot build on top of it. So in reality, I think you need both. You need to behave like Switzerland and integrate with all the other tools that people are using, because the more context you're going to put into these systems, the better. But data sovereignty is a very real thing. I encourage our customers to store their data not in BetterStack, but have BetterStack manage the data, but store them in their own buckets in open format so that they're in charge of their data. And I think you really do need a powerful infrastructure to make an AI server really work. And you can only do that with your own.
No, makes sense. Makes sense. I agree with that, by the way.
Did you play with these AI SREs?
No, not I think with some, right? But not with all of them. I mean the Resolve AIs, etc. I've not tested myself. Have you tested them or?
Briefly. But you look, my first impression is very good.
Yes. And I also see the value, especially if you have multiple tools, right? Think about you have your logs in Splunk, you have Datadog for whatever APM, and then you have Prometheus for your metrics. And today you need to, the developer logs into logs, has to copy something, paste it into Datadog, and the AI SRE agent gives you the full context, right? That can do the work for you and figure out things and combine things. I think that's also a big benefit of those tools, that they can plug into multiple tools.
Yes, 100%. As long as you don't get rate limited by Splunk or Datadog. In that case, you're kind of screwed. We'll see where this goes. It's a very, very, very exciting field.
So in your opinion, is that the next big thing in observability, the AI SRE agent, or what is it for you?
So again, the pitch is instrument your apps with no code changes with eBPF and OpenTelemetry, then be able to store 80 times as much data for the same budget. I'm very excited about that. And then rebuild your workflow that you are able to use an AI SRE and MCP server reliably in your day-to-day work. It's the combination of these three things that fundamentally changed how I observe our systems. And so I highly recommend, every viewer to give it a shot on their own.
Absolutely. You're right. I wish you all the best and good luck with growing BetterStack that fast as you have done in the past years.
Mirko, thank you so much for the invitation. Let's do this next time on the BetterStack YouTube channel with the BetterStack podcast.
We will. Thank you.
Cheers. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening. I'm always sharing new insights and insider knowledge about observability on LinkedIn. You can follow me there for more. The podcast is produced by DashZero. We make observability easy for every developer.